Greetings and welcome back once again, Guardians, to yet another lore yapping session with Chris. It's been a while. We've had a break from these because I haven't really been in, Destiny and going through a lot of new stuff. I didn't play the Call to Arms event, but Renegades is here. We have met Dredge and Bael, and we have a lot to talk about that's actually going to be running off of and connecting back to a video I did months and months and months ago, where I talked about that there were cracks within the last city's composure, I guess is what I'll call it, where we were seeing that the city had some dissenters of its own. Even after Final Shape, we saw how the Witness had dissenting voices within it, even though it was a whole civilization compacted into one being, a whole planet compacted into one being. We weren't free from that suffering either. We have the same thing going on in the city. People are very upset that they don't have representation, and there are some voices out there that are a little louder than others. So, we're going to get deep into that and how Renegades and Dredge and Bael tie in to this whole continuing theme here. So, also, whenever we get into this, for anyone who has not finished the Renegades story, I would tell you there are some pretty major spoilers in here, so please do not watch the whole thing if you choose that you want to complete it before coming back and watching the video. That is totally fine. But if you've made it past the spoiler warning, then we'll go ahead and continue. But let's go ahead and talk about why Dredge and Bael should really be treated less of, what we were calling him in the story of just some lightless punk who's causing trouble, and really dig into the true warning against the Vanguard and the Guardians as we move forward into this new timeline of Destiny. So what do I mean by digging into the true warning? What I'm talking about is what we end up finding out throughout the story is they drop hints that Bael is getting shipments from Tex Mechanica under a bunch of false identities that are giving him weapons and the things that he needs to conduct this station and this operation. And so we're a bit confused at first. Well, when we talk to Blue on the derelict, she ends up telling us that whenever we shot Bael's hand off, whenever, Drifter, attacked him and shot him with Thorn and blew his hand off, we took his hand and did a DNA test. And that's where we found out that Dredge and Bael is not a Guardian. That's why he's so hell-bent on making sure that he does something with his life, because his liver's been replaced by metal. In another lore card in one of the Sparrows, it explains that he's missing an eye. He has blisters on his face that continue to grow and spread every hour. And at the end of the lore card, his nose decays off of his face, and instead of letting it fall or dealing with it or trying to patch it up and keep that cosmetic look to him, he just reaches up and snaps his nose off of his face. And then he smiles in the reflection of his helmet. So Bael, number one, is a madman, but we find out by that DNA test that Dredge and Bael is the son of Tex Mechanica's magnate, Cesar Bizet. And so the crazy thing about why this should be treated as a very serious warning to us, to the Vanguard, and to our existence in the last city as a whole is similar to what I mentioned in my previous video about the cracks showing in the last city. After the Final Shape, the city made it very clear in several different lore cards that they do not agree with the Vanguard. Ikora has promised them for years that after the immediate threat to the last city has been taken care of, she will go through the process to choose somebody from the city to provide representation to the lightless of the last city. So everyone in the city who is not immortal, who's not a guardian, who doesn't have to worry about, oh, I can just be resurrected. They have to actually have a mortality and a fear of death. And they've been very upset that this is not happening. The Praxic Order has been one of the orders to actually speak up pretty intensely against Ikora and the Vanguard, not only for their use of the darkness, but the fact that they are not keeping their word. At first, the darkness was outlawed, but then now Guardians of the Crucible are using it, and it's for everyone in the city to see. And then there are other sects of the Last City's humans that are coming up and speaking up. They're casting their own votes. They're, they're sending nasty letters to the Vanguard, specifically to Ikora or Zavala. And there's even hints from whenever we got our skimmer during the Guardian game a year or two back that Lysander from the Concordat might still be in the city. He's out there and potentially influencing these conversations and these uprisings. But that's important backstory for us to continue with what I'm talking about with Bael. If Bael is some lightless punk and the son of Tex Mechanica's magnate, he's just a human from the city. He's nothing else. And the reason that's terrifying is because a human from the city has somehow been able to learn to use darkness himself, or was taught or found it from the Praxic Order, and communicate with a member of the Nine. Now, some of you may be sitting here and being like, well, he's just, a punk teen who is, spoiled and wants to get whatever he wants, and that's why he's throwing these tantrums, and he's very immature. But I think there's more to it. I don't think we would just be thrown a new Dredgen, number one, which doesn't surprise me that he took on the name of Dredgen. There are followers of Yor that are still active in the Crucible. They go in with little replicas of Thorn, and they specifically say screw the objective, and they just shoot other Guardians, and that's the whole reason they participate in the Crucible. But Shaxx allows it to happen because he believes that it satisfies that hunger for Guardian-on-Guardian combat, and so it'll keep them at bay. So the city knows of Dredgens, the city knows of that story, and they see that, people take it a little seriously in the Crucible. So the whole Dredgen title doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is if, let's just say, he was one of these dissenting voices in the city, and he happens to become so angry and so upset with the idea that these immortals are ruling mortal humans that he either, one, channeled that anger into being able to use darkness powers, or he was just one very strong dissenting voice that called out into the ether, screamed out his anger into the ether, asking for some type of divine or cosmic intervention into this situation on Earth. And he got an answer. Six answered him. So the god that he called out for answered his call. And I think this also ties into the fact that 3 is dead. 3, as 6 kind of mentions in his very tangled way of speaking and very advanced way of speaking, a lot of the words that 6 uses is very advanced English. I would say it's like proficiency, like really high proficiency of English that's used, but he talks about where the protection of Earth is gone because 3 is dead. So maybe he saw this as an opportunity, speaking of 6, saw this as an opportunity to cause chaos on Earth, because 3 can't intervene. 3 can't protect and stand in between Bael and 6 communicating within the Last City. He had, at first, like radio interference, but as soon as 3 died, that interference left. And so it's one of these things where you look at what's going on, and for me, I could definitely see where someone who maybe isn't as caught up with the lore just goes, oh, well, that's cool. It's a little confusing that someone who doesn't have the light can use darkness, and we've dealt with him now and he's lost a hand. So, he's kind of just a bitch. He's just going to kind of go out. We'll get rid of him one day and we'll be fine. But for me, I see this as a very serious warning that anyone in the Last City, especially if they find out about Bael himself, if they find out that someone from the city with status, by the way, because he was the son of the Tex Mechanica magnate. So he literally, had some status. If anybody can become upset enough to actually stand up to the Vanguard and the Guardians, we are in some serious trouble, even in our home turf. If Lysander is still out there, or if someone is as angry as Bael or angrier, we could literally end up with a revolution in the last city, all because Ikora and the Vanguard made promises that they can't keep or won't keep. One or the other. Now, I wish that Zavala maybe would give them some form of hope with being able to let them know, like, hey, I don't have my ghost anymore. I'm mortal now, and he can then serve as kind of like the humanities representation, but I don't think they'd accept it because he had the light once before. And I'm also afraid of us going on these missions because if Zavala is left on his own, what does that mean for him if he's left to deal with this revolution on his own? Does he turn the city's defenses on the humans? Does he turn the human guards on other human beings? Or does he just roll over and let whatever happens, happens? That is probably one of the scarier theories that I have, that if we do have a revolution, Zavala might be unfortunately on his own. But we'll kind of see that as that goes. But I definitely wanted to get this video out there because I started connecting the pieces to my old video. And once we found out that this Dredgen Bael was never a Guardian and isn't, it really stuck it in my mind that, oh no, this is actually someone in the last city revolting against the Vanguard, and they were given the power and the help by one of the 9 to do so. I don't know. I don't know what else could happen. I don't know what else could come from the city. I don't know who else. What other dissenting voices or dissenting individuals in the city might cause our next issue, might be the next immediate threat. And what's even worse is, if you think about it, what if Ikora doesn't see them as an immediate threat at first and people in the city suffer because of it? Scary things to think about. But obviously, as the expansion goes on, I'll be reading through a lot more lore pages, a lot, lore cards, whether it's on guns or on ships, sparrows, ghosts. And if I find anything interesting that's worthwhile talking about, I'll definitely bring it in. If you haven't already, definitely go watch our video about Blue. I'm super excited. I love her so much. I love her voice. Her voice actor did a fantastic job. I keep walking past her every time I can on Thursday. So I hope to see you guys out there on the frontier. If I invade you, sorry, I'm trying to get the red lightsaber crystal. I really want it. So if you see me blast you or anything like that, I promise it's only whenever I need it. I'm not going to be just, nuking everybody just because. But outside of that, I hope to see you guys in the next video, and see you next time.